Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. You're listening to PHLY Flyers presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me, as always, Philadelphia's number one hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor, as well as Broad Street Hockey's own, Kelly Hinkle. Guys, we have a lot of stuff to talk to. Most of it pretty fun. But I think we should just right off the top get to the newsiest thing of the day. Carter Hart and the four NHLers, 5 total players charged in the Hockey Canada sexual assault case. The press conference began about an hour ago.
It was about 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
It was around 2 o'clock, and it's... there's nothing that really came out of it that we didn't already piece together, hear through reports, but the situation is, I guess, official, and the proceedings are underway now. They were charged. 1 count of sexual assault is what I saw for Carter Hart. Is there anything we need to really get into with this before I don't know what to say.
It's obviously terrible.
Yeah.
And I would not expect Carter Hart to be, in the Flyers cards anytime soon. It seems like where the situation is that the charges are made official, so now we're no longer going by reports. We now know that Carter Hart is one of the 5. It appears that the next court-related proceeding will be on April 30th. The one thing that I am intrigued to see how it plays out, I'm on record as thinking that I do not believe there is any chance that Carter Hart is going to play play an NHL game, whether it's for the Flyers or anybody else, while this proceeding is still, in the process, I would say. That said, I am intrigued to see how this is going to play out from a availability standpoint, because Gary Bettman did talk to the media at the All-Star game, and he more or less said, we're going to wait until this proceeding plays out. We're not going to implement any discipline until the legal process concluded. Right now, Carter Hart is on an indefinite leave of absence that he himself requested. So I do wonder, what happens if Carter Hart says, I'm back? If I had to guess, I would assume there's some sort of handshake agreement between everyone's sides. It's just stay out of this. And, if you try to come back, then our hands may be forced. And if you force our hand, perhaps then you may never play another game in the NHL, period. Definitely, regardless of whether you're interested or not. I don't know. But it does, there's ambiguity still, which is concerning to me. I was really hoping that the NHL would just draw a line and be like, as long as these charges are outstanding, then these guys can't play.
One would think.
But it seems like Gary Bettman, in his classic lawyer self, wants to make it ambiguous. And
his comments were something else.
I still don't think Carter Hart is going to be back for the Flyers this year. I also suspect that he will not be qualified, and then he will be an unrestricted free agent until the legal proceedings are concluded. But I don't know for sure. And Gary Bettman, by making it as ambiguous as he did, left the door open for other things to happen over the next month or so, which is worth keeping an eye on.
Obviously, the bigger story here is the sexual assault case. But just from a pure, I like to scroll cap friendly, I find these things interesting perspective, all 4 NHL players are restricted free agents after this season. It makes sense. They're all the same age, about the same point in their contracts.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it plays out, how the league handles, if they don't get qualifying offers, because I can't imagine extending a qualifying offer to these guys with this thing still up in the air. Do they then just become unrestricted free agents? Is there some sort of... we're putting some sort of limbo. We're putting a time lapse.
Yeah, like a freeze.
There's a freeze. I'm not sure. That's just, I find how the NHL handles that will be something to keep an eye on, I guess. But I would assume these guys, you can't bring these dudes back to your team until there is a definite, and the teams that they're on, I think it's just kind of that's over.
Yeah, I don't know how the NHL, not just the teams, but the league as a whole, could allow, even setting aside the morality elements of it, I just don't know how they could they could allow us that kind of circus of bringing a guy back who is, having charges laid against him in this serious of a case and just letting him play. I can't imagine.
So you guys know I don't other sport as much as you two do. Has there been a situation in which an active player has criminal charges pressed against them and they have not been suspended?
I think it depends on the criminal charge. Like, yeah, there have been times where like a guy will get, he'll get arrested for some type of like, I don't know, not even domestic violence because it's obviously very serious, but I'm just thinking like, some type of thing, and they will let him play in the interim until the legal case is.
It does kind of vary. Like,
arrest. I'm not a lawyer.
I know. That's the thing. Like, because I know that like guys get arrested all the time. I mean, they get not all the time, but like you hear about guys.
There's a lot
arrested.
of professional athletes. Some of them get arrested.
Right.
Yes.
And being arrested is obviously different from being formally charged with a crime. And it's just like I was surprised to hear Bettman say, like, "Nah, we're not suspending these guys. They're still active players." Like, but why?
I really think what Bettman's doing here is he's trying to kind of have his cake and eat it too, because what he's doing is he's crossing his fingers that none of these players are going to force his hand. That they can just run the clock out on these contracts. They're never going to see these guys again over the rest of this year because all these players hold to their indefinite leaves of absence because they're dealing. And then when their contracts expire, then the NHL doesn't really have to worry about it that much anymore. And that very well could be how it plays out. However, by not doing anything, Bettman is leaving the door open for a player to say, "I'm done with my indefinite leave of absence. I want to play. What are you going to do? Not play me?" I'm not saying any of them are going to do it. I'm just saying that because Bettman refused to, and the reason why he refused to do it, surely, is because he's worried about grievances and lawsuits and all that stuff. And my thing would be just do the right thing. But this is Gary Bettman, the lawyer. This is what he's going to do.
The league is getting lucky with all of their contracts expiring.
Yes.
Like, there's not going to be some major contract termination situation that they have to, now we have to deal with this ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, like they're getting a little lucky in that regard, just from a PR perspective. Not like lucky, like obviously it's bad for this to happen.
I just think that what's going on here is that Gary Bettman is trying to kick the can down the road, have his cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
And we shall see if any of the four, I guess, because Ferment is not an NHL player, but if any of the four kind of call his bluff, I would hope not. I would hope that they all, because Bettman basically said, like, I would hope that they would be more focused on their legal case right now than playing in the NHL. But he left the door open. So it's just something to keep an eye on. My guess is that it doesn't become an issue, but Bettman left the door open. Yeah. And that's a bit frustrating.
It is.
Let's go on to something a little more lighthearted. Yeah. The actual hockeying. Owen Tippett back at practice today. Has he been officially?
He was back at practice yesterday as well.
Back at practice yesterday.
They practiced on Sunday, but this was the second day that he's practiced. I'm obviously not in Florida, but the players are. And it seems like Owen Tippett, I don't know if he has been officially pulled off injured reserve. I don't think he has, but it's been past the day limit, so he can be pulled off whenever. Obviously, the Flyers play tomorrow night in Florida against a really good Panthers team, but it seems like this is trending to Tippett playing against his former team in Florida.
I was going to say, it being the Panthers, I mean, they clearly weren't going to rush this thing. Now there needed to be a little roster manipulation that went on, and they were like, well, why rush it? Let's just put him on IR and problem solved. But it being his former team, do you think there's a little extra, like, I'm getting my ass out there? I was playing real well when I got hurt. I want to carry that over and kind of show them. Obviously, like, different coach and everything. It's been a little while, but still, you got to believe.
I hope so.
You got to believe he wants it a little bit.
I hope
right?
So. I want to see a spicy Owen Tippett come back out.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not want to? Look, these are professional athletes. They all have those things that drive them internally. And as much as Owen Tippett presents it as, me being traded was a blessing in disguise, it hurt that a team that took him 10th overall after, 3 or 4 years decided they just didn't want him anymore and were willing to kind of have him as a throw-in on a trade. That's got to fuel him. And what I will say is that I worry a little bit about those types of things from a team perspective, because it's like, are they rushing him back? I don't think that is the case here, because I think if anything, they were being extra cautious with him going into the bye week because they knew he had an extra week.
That's what it seemed like.
So I would worry a little bit in slightly different circumstances. If like, so let's say if there wasn't the bye week, I'd be a little bit worried that Tippett is agitating to play in this game, maybe coming back a little early because it's Florida, given the fact that he just had a bye week. He was literally on the vacation trip with like the whole crew, with Farabee and Frost and Drysdale and everybody. I think Owen Tippett's doing okay. As long as he didn't like trip running along the pool.
No, it seems like they were, because he was listed as day to day, and that was almost 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, you got to believe, unless it was something way more serious than any of us know, he's probably okay. I'm excited to see him back. And I got to tell you, I know we get to this point in the season, we've been through 50 games. There's 32 left, hopefully more. It starts to feel a little bit like work, no matter how much. I mean, listen, again, my mom was an elementary school teacher. My dad's a heavy equipment mechanic. I know what fucking real work is, and I don't do it. But it does, you got to do something at a certain time on a certain day, and that's work.
Yes.
It starts to feel a little bit like it. I hope those players enjoyed that time off, because all I had to do was no post games for a week, and I'm like, let's get some Flyers hockey going, man. Like, I am excited to watch this team again. And
it seemed like, based on the pictures, they had a pretty good time.
They had some fun.
I think
Charlie had some fun.
Yeah, I had a good ski trip. It was fun. But one thing that did make me happy about those pictures, I like the fact that Drysdale has already been accepted. Like, he was with the gang. I think it was Farabee, Frost, Tippett. York was there. Zamola was there, which also I love.
That, yeah.
Well, they're buddies. He's real close with Forster and Farabee, because they became buds, really good buds. He became buds with Forster and Lehigh, and then he became buds with Farabee because Forster lives with Farabee, and they became good friends over the summer. Like that trio, they were like the core trio over the summer, because three of them. Like, Farabee and Forrester stayed to work out. Zamola stayed because he was rehabbing, because he had the surgery. And that trio became buds. So, like, when I first saw Zamola in the crew, I was a little surprised. And then I thought, no, actually, that makes perfect sense. And then you had York there. You had Drysdale, which makes sense because Drysdale was living with York. And then Tippett popped up in a picture. So I'm like, cool. Owen Tippett showed up too.
That.
So all the young kids were hanging out with their girlfriends or whatever. So
good for them.
Now, the Flyers are back tomorrow night at Florida. Then they come home for 3. They have a pretty tough schedule.
Yes.
They lost 5 in a row going into the break. And we all kind of just went, nobody needed this break more than the Flyers. They've been going hard for 50 games. No one's played more than, I think there are 8 teams in the league that have played 50. No one's played more. Yeah. They've been going real hard. We know their style of play. We think some guys are probably a little banged up. They needed the rest. Tippett's coming back, all that. Florida's really fucking good.
They're real good. I did. So on allphly.com on Friday, we posted an all-city beat writer roundtable article with me, Mario from CHGO, Craig from PHNX, and Megan from DNVR. Sorry, I have to think out these call letters to make sure I'm saying it right.
I feel like all the call letters make sense. Chicago's tough.
Yeah, Chicago is tough. You have to actually think about it. But in that piece, it closes out with our predictions as of now for the Cup final, and I have Florida as my East team.
You have them in the East. I just pushed.
Yeah.
I bet RG Tree and I last week both bet exact final Florida and Vancouver.
Okay,
that's for you, Vancouver.
Yeah, right. I have Florida. Dallas is mine.
Dallas is real good. I was looking at things and I was like, why? Like, Vancouver's odds aren't right in my, I don't know what they should be because I'm not an expert, but I feel like they should be more favored than they are. So let's go with this. And then I was like, well, let's get an exact final in there too and bet them in Florida. But Florida's really, really freaking good. I think they're the best team in the East. I believe that they are going to the Stanley Cup final for a second year in a row. After the 5-game losing streak, we had the week to kind of take a step back and go, where are they? Where are they going? And I need to see them look really good out of the break.
Yes.
At least look closer to the team that won 5 in a row before they
100%.
lost 5 in a row.
Yeah.
Could this start to turn into what we were seeing a little bit in that first month and a half of the season where it was like, this is the perfect rebuild loss. They looked great. and they lose 4-2. Like, I can really see, like, Winnipeg's coming up. They have, like, the best teams in the league, basically, on the schedule over the next few weeks. I'm starting to think that they're not going to make the playoffs for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm starting, and not even like I'm down on them and things are going to go poorly.
Faith.
I'm just
I
like,
know.
I'm starting to get a little.
I mean, it's going to be tough.
This is really tough, and they're going to trade guys. Like, they keep telling us.
Yeah,
they're
not
gonna,
hiding it.
like, they are not hiding. Like, the coach, forget the GM and the president being like, well, the big picture. The coach who's like, we're going to try to win every game. Also, it's going to become increasingly harder because we're losing guys. And like, it might not even just be like, okay, they lost to Scott Lawton, they lost to Mark Stahl, who doesn't play. Like, there's a chance higher end guys get traded than like a Morgan Frost, maybe a TK. We all believe Sean Walker is going. You know, he's a top 4 defenseman. Like, is it time to start preparing ourselves? I know you've been prepared the whole time for them not to make the playoffs.
I'm just gonna stay quiet right now and let you guys.
But like, where are you with this whole thing, Kelly?
I mean, I'm just doing the Bill Matz buy the ticket, take the ride at this point. I mean, like, if we get a bunch of those Colorado games, those losses where you're like, you know what? They got Colorado.
Yeah,
like,
the difference tonight was the MVP of the league.
Yeah, but it's fine. I'm not going to be upset about that. That said, I'm very hopeful that they come out of this break with the kind of spark that we saw from them at the early part of the season, and they are able to do what they did to Dallas, which is like systematically dismantle a team that is worlds better than them, both on paper and on the ice, and somehow they still just mop the floor with them. I would like to see them do that maybe 1 or 2 out of 3 times that they play these tough teams, and I think it's possible. We've seen them do it more than once this season. It could happen. But if it doesn't, that's kind of like the best part about the season, I think, is that, yes, I'm rooting hard for them to make the playoffs, and I really want it to happen because I think it would be the most fun option. But if they don't, I'm not really going to be that upset, particularly if they don't in a way that looks good, if that makes sense.
Is this if they don't part 2, Charlie?
No, I to me, if you're asking me like what I think needs to happen for them to get going, because I've seen them play really good hockey for most of this first half, really up until these final 5 games.
And like
these
2.5 of the 5 were not that bad.
Yeah, exactly. To me, the big thing that really bit them at the end of this, run when they started losing, it was the fact that the big guys were down.
Yeah.
Like, looking at this, I mean, you've got Travis Konechny has 1 goal in his last 12 games.
That's not good enough.
He is the team's best player, definitely their most talented player in my mind. If he's not scoring, they're going to start losing, and they're going to keep losing. And I think Travis Konechny will bounce back. But the fact of the matter is, he hasn't been playing, in my mind, anywhere near as good as he did. Or I think it's his last 11, because I might be counting the All-Star game. But in any case, he hasn't been scoring much. Then you go back and you look at guys like Travis Sanheim, guys like Sean Couturier. Now, Sean Couturier, in his defense, I do believe is banged up. However, you're talking about a guy who, during that 5-game...
He's the 1C.
Yeah, during that 5-game losing streak, the Flyers were underwater by expected goals of 5-on-5, 47.99% with Couturier on the ice. By actual goals, 34.74%. So they're getting outchanced and outscored with Couturier on the ice. That's part of the reason why, and I said this on our post-game show after the Boston game, that's part of the reason why so many of the superstars were showing against the Flyers, because if Sean Couturier isn't there to be Sean Couturier, or he's only 70% of himself, then yeah, guys like Nathan McKinnon and Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point and David Pastrnak are going to tear you up. And they're playing a lot of those types of guys the rest of the way. So Couturier needs to get back to where he was the first 45 games of the season. And then Travis Sanheim really needs to get back to where he was, because
he was really struggling.
I mean, that's what happens when you're a team that doesn't have, like, the Flyers don't have the high-end talent, but what they did have was they had a few guys that were playing like the high-end talent. And then when those guys stop playing like the high-end talent, that's when the issues really start to pop up. I think it's possible that 1 or 2 or even all 3 of those guys could improve and could get back to where they were over the final 32 games, but they still have to do it, and they have to show me that they can do it.
I want to talk about Travis Sanheim a little bit more in a second, because his his ascension in the first 40 or so games of the year was huge.
Yeah.
And his dip
Yeah.
has been equally as apparent. You know what else is huge? The bagels at Bagels and Company. Listen, they have the
segue.
absolute best Brooklyn-style bagels made right here with Philly love. Now, first thing you have to know about them, like I just said, gigantic bagels. You know what else is gigantic? Their selection. 15 to 20 different types to choose from daily. I saw Kelly. You went down.
I did.
You went down to Bagels and Company
To my
after a
local
run.
Bagels and Company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the selection, because you took a picture of one that really piqued my interest.
They had a Doritos bagel.
This is like some straight up. Like,
This is like some mad scientist shit that they did on there.
yes.
I didn't get the Doritos bagel. They have like a really good selection of like normal weird stuff.
Normal, and then
For example, like Everywhere has an everything bagel. They have regular everything, whole wheat everything, and egg everything.
oh,
I know. I got an egg everything. It was delicious.
that sounds excellent.
Wonderful bagel.
Huge selection of bagels, and when you have that many different kinds of bagels, ranging from weird to absolutely staples, you need a huge selection of cream cheeses, 30 different varieties every day. Obviously, we talk all the time about the different themes they have, whether they be holiday, sports, what have you. But the most important thing, an affordable brand. You get a lot of food for cheap. And, inflation, man. Everything needs to be a little cheaper for you. Bagels & Co. coming through. So for the best Brooklyn-style bagels made right here in Philly, head to thebagelsandco.com/store-locator to find the closest Bagels & Company near you. All right, let's get back to Travis Sanheim for a moment. His dip recently has been apparent. The scoring has all but dried up.
Oh, it's
That's
dead.
been a bit of an issue. The defense also
Not good.
not all that good. Do we think this is kind of part of, well, this is why they backed off his minutes, because he was playing like 26
That's
a
what I'm
game,
hoping.
and then they had to back it up, so they're like, we are pushing this dude? Or is it just kind of him leveling back to closer to a medium between last season and this season?
Well, it's probably a lot of things. Maybe the minutes are playing into it. Maybe this is a little bit of natural regression that he wasn't as good as he was. That wasn't his true talent level, essentially. One thing I do want to point out, and I wonder if this could be having an impact, I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it, is we talked about a lot over the first 3 months of the year, really, about how comfortable Sanheim seemed on the right side. And really, ever since they traded for Drysdale, they've had to do a lot more line juggling. And it's not that he hasn't played on the right side. He still played on the right side quite a lot. But when he's been with Drysdale, he hasn't. There have been a lot of times where within games, he'll have some shifts as a left side D, some shifts as a right side D. They've been using the 7 defenseman thing a lot. I almost wonder if it may have knocked him off his rhythm a little bit. And now that he's maybe thinking a little bit more in game than he was before, where it was kind of just, click and play. I wonder if that might be having a slight impact on his struggles. And that might play into why, it would be great if they could just get rid of one of these defensemen and then bring things back to a relative normality. But obviously that's easier said than done, and you want to get the biggest return possible for whoever you're trading. It is a logjam. And I wonder if the logjam is hurting Travis Sanheim, his comfort level, a little bit more than maybe people realize.
It's the 7 defenseman thing, like maybe just not having that steady partner that he had. Like we talked so much about, listen, is Cam York producing the offense we want? No, but on that top pair, they were winning a lot of games, playing a lot of minutes, and it seemed to be working pretty well. They're playing over a third of the game, the two of them together, and they're winning a lot. So this thing seems to be working. Now, I believe John Tortorella said today after practice or yesterday, the lines out there don't think that these are like set in stone or whatever, but we see Sanheim with a familiar partner, Rasmus Ristolainen. Now that does move Sanheim back to the left side where he had so much success on the right, but it is familiar.
It's a familiar
They've spent
pair.
the better part of the previous 2 seasons together.
Yeah, especially, what was it, the 2021-2022 season? That was more or less turned out to be their most effective pair, especially because the first pair with Provorov was a dumpster fire that year.
It was. Do we think this is... Now, maybe he's right back on the right. Maybe he's back on the right side with York. Maybe it's Drysdale. Also, it's It's probably going to be 7 defensemen again, so it's going to be a little bit of everything.
Exactly.
But maybe putting those two together for a little bit to steady Sanheim, could that be the reason behind it? Just like, here's something familiar, and you know where Ristolainen's going to be.
True.
He is the stay-at-home defenseman on this team. Go do what you were doing in the first half of the season.
I mean, it could be for both of them a little bit of like, here's a comfortable partner, get your shit together, because they both have been struggling.
Yeah, Risto got scratched that one game.
Yeah, he hasn't been great either. And I just think we haven't been talking about it much because it just doesn't really... Right, exactly. I would like to see them, if they're going to do this, give it some time, like not so much juggling. Like, give these guys time to see if this gets them both going again, rather than, you know, juggling in game or like one game, oh, we lost, let's shuffle it again. Like, give them a little bit of time to get going. I don't know how much they're going to be able to do that with the 7D, but that's why John Tortorella gets paid the big bucks. Like, he's got to figure it out.
To me, what'll be interesting to see, if they, assuming they keep the Sanheim-Ristolainen pairing together for a week or so, I'll be interested to see how they're deployed. Because you think about it, Ristolainen, the vast majority of this year, has been deployed like a third pair defenseman. He's functionally been their number 5 on their third pair, because you've had Sanheim as the number 1 right side defenseman. You've had Walker as the number 2. Risto, since he's been back from his early season injury, he's been the number 3. Now, Sanheim has very clearly been the number 1. Like, not just first pair, the number 1, the guy getting the most minutes. You've got a guy in Risto as his partner now who has been used as a third pair guy. And I think everybody can agree that Travis Sanheim, over the last 2 weeks at least, maybe dating back to even near the end of December, hasn't been the same guy he was at the start of the year. I'm curious if this is, like, is this a promotion for Risto or is this a demotion for Sanheim? I just don't know. And we're going to have to keep an eye on what the minutes are, on you know, who's getting the matchups against the top lines, against the top forwards. Because I don't know. It could go either way. They could be saying, like, this could be a little, if you're going full Galaxy brand, this could be a little like, maybe we showcase Risto a little bit, see if a team might overpay for him at the deadline. Or it could be a, man, Sanheim's struggling. Maybe we should ease up on the minutes a little bit to give him a chance to reset.
I don't know who else it would be, but when I see a York-Drysdale pairing, I go, yeah, well, if Risto's like the right side guy on the other pair, the top pair is York-Drysdale.
York-Drysdale, you
like,
would think so, yeah.
Not that York's had like the best season, but he's been steady.
Yeah.
And Drysdale's their most dangerous defenseman.
Yeah.
And then, like, well, Sealer, Walker, I like those guys, but how many minutes are they going to play?
But that has been used as their second pair. So you could theoretically, if you wanted to, just for a week or so to give Sanheim a chance, you could say, functionally, our first pair is York-Drysdale. Our second pair is still Sealer Walker. And the Sanheim-Risto pair for a few games is only getting 17 minutes a night.
Maybe I'm setting myself up for a big letdown. And we're going to have some details coming for you in the next few days, maybe a week, about what we're doing for the trade deadline. It's going to be real fun. But I'm actually looking forward to what the trade deadline could be this year, because there's so many possibilities. How many they actually pull off, what comes of all of it. Maybe the only guy traded is Sean Walker, you know? Like, that's on the table too. I'm looking forward to what we are going to see in the days ahead. And if maybe you're looking forward to what we're going to see on the ice in the days ahead, you want to go check out these Flyers. They're away to start, but then 3 at home and pretty good opponents in all 3. You should check it out with GameTime. Now, I tell you about GameTime all the time, whether it's the best price guarantee, you know, you find ticket in the same section in a row for less. They'll give you 110% of the difference. That's huge. The seat view, you see exactly where your seats are. That's always great. But something they're running right now ahead of the big game, it's this really, really awesome promotion with Vegas 100. Is the promo code, man. You get $100 off a ticket to the big game. If you want to go out to Vegas for this.
Big game.
For the big game.
The big one.
The big game.
The real big game.
Yeah, the big one. There's some, I believe, some gold miners up against some Native Americans in a battle for Vince Lombardi's soul.
If you're fairly certain. If you are a fan of the Birds, maybe you go just to boo everyone.
Boo everyone. That's what we're best at. But if you are thinking about heading out to Vegas, you're like, you know what I could use in Vegas? An extra $100. Well, get your tickets with GameTime, and you will get that with $100 off using promo code Vegas100 in the GameTime app, all of the other promotions, all of the other specialties of Game Time are on the table. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Right now, Game Time users get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the Game Time app and use code VEGAS100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All sorts of deals for people, whether you want to go out to Las Vegas or stay right here in Philly to check out your hockey team. All right. It is now. We're doing this on the day. It is time for just another Mailbag Monday. We have mailbag questions from the listeners. I'm excited because it's actually Monday, and we might get to most of these. And then I have no idea what we do the rest of the week. There's actually games this week.
They're going to play hockey.
We can talk about the games. That wasn't on the table last week, so it all worked out. We are going to start with a question from a listener named Flyers. One step closer. If we are in the playoffs...
Are they about to break?
Yeah. If we are in the playoffs at the trade deadline, I want... A, Flyers set the value on target players. If they are met, then trade them. If they are not, you keep them as rentals for a run. B, do not go get a goalie. Just bring Kolosov over. KHL is done in 15 games. Are you okay if the Flyers do this? Let me start with A, set the target on players. If the price is met, trade them. If not, you just keep them as rentals for a run. I
mostly agree with that.
I mean, like, no, you trade Nick Sealer. You trade Sean Walker. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nick Sealer, like, they kind of want to keep him. I don't know.
I have so many problems with that. I don't know. We talked about it a lot last
the
week,
rentals, I don't want to keep. Like, I just don't think that makes any sense when you're in a rebuild.
Yeah, like, well, if someone offers anything for Mark Stahl, you take it.
Well, yeah, Mark Stahl doesn't even really factor into the equation for me. If someone offers something, here you go. Yeah. The price you set for him is literally a bag of potatoes.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't play.
It's like how in Moneyball where the movie when they have to stock the soda machine for a year.
I don't want my players paying for soda. Like, that is hilarious. Like, to think that that's a major league franchise and guys are putting a buck in a machine for soda. Anyway. Oh my God. Do you think any of the rentals, namely Nick Sealer, Sean Walker, like, there's a reason to keep them?
I mean, the only way you keep Nick Sealer in my mind is if he signs, and I think they're trying to do that. Sean Walker, I think that they have pretty much resigned themselves to the fact that he's going to get moved. Now, look, if the best offer for Sean Walker is a 4th round pick, maybe they say, we'll keep him. Like, that doesn't really do anything for us. But
you can probably get that for his rights.
Yeah. But right now, exactly. That's a really good point. But right now, I think the way they're looking at it with Sean Walker is we want a first. I don't think it's as cut and dry as just tell everyone this is what we're going to take, and if you meet,
that's a good way to make no trade.
Yeah, right. Like the Chuck Fletcher school of negotiation.
It is reminiscent of that. What I do think there is, like, what I think it does exist, and this is how I suspect Briere will play it out, is they have an ask. They have the public ask what they want from a team, and basically like, hey, if you want to get a deal done, you offer us this, and you got it done. Yeah. We're done. Then you have something internally where it's like, okay, if we don't get our ask, what is sufficient for us to do the deal anyway, even if it's not our pie in the sky dream? Now, if no one meets that secret limit, then maybe you think about keeping some of these guys. But I think that most likely teams are going to meet that limit.
Probably.
Like, if let's say the ask for Walker is a first, we'll take a second. Maybe we come to the conclusion where it becomes like a conditional first, where something has to happen for it to turn into a 1st round pick. And that's the deal that gets moved. We'll see. The one thing that is interesting, and this was brought up in our Discord, I was going back through and reading last night when I got home from the flight. Somebody made this point, and it's an interesting point, that while because Briere is a first-year GM, there might be something to be said, and this is his first time doing a deadline, there might be something to be said for him driving a hard bargain this time. Because he doesn't want to have the reputation of, well, I'll just give away Sean Walker for a 3rd at the last minute if none of the offers are good enough. And it's a reasonable argument because the hope in Philadelphia is that Danny Briere is going to be the GM of the Flyers for a long time. And you don't want to have the reputation of being a GM that just gives guys away.
Right.
You want to be the guy who if it's a staring contest, Danny ain't going to blink.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if that might play into it a little bit in that,
I like that, actually.
Maybe one guy who we think is definitely going to get moved maybe doesn't get moved because Danny feels like the other GMs are trying to take advantage of him. And he wants to make it clear that, like, no, if you want my guys, you're going to have to pay up.
No, I like that, actually.
That's a very interesting, especially considering outside of Walker and Sealer, like, there's no one that has to be traded.
Yeah.
We've said all along, like, you can always trade Scott Lawton. It might not be for the first round pick you wanted last year, but you can always trade Scott Lawton. There will be a suitor. You can always figure out something with Cam Atkinson at some point down the line. Like, there's no hard, okay, well, you have till July 1st, 2025 to trade Travis Konechny. Like, there ain't no reason to just give in because you think you have to.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. The Kolosov part of this is something I find interesting, just because I hadn't considered it.
It is funny.
Now, Dynamo Minsk, it has 9 games left on their regular season schedule. I don't have the standings in front of me. No fucking clue if they're a playoff team. No idea what happens in Russian playoffs.
Wow, you don't know what's happening? That's weird.
But say after these 9 games, because he's on loan, like he's signed to his ELC, he is technically property of the Flyers.
True.
Now, we have seen this play out before with goalies in the KHL that we thought were coming. May even have signed a contract, and then suddenly they're, prisoners of
in
war,
Siberia,
basically.
yes.
So, do you think it's a possibility, just like if the world was normal, do you think it's a possibility they bring him over like a college player when the season runs out and you give him a shot?
No. So here's the reason why I would say no. Look, anything's possible. The reason why this is even a possibility is because
Carter Hart.
Not only that, he is under contract. He was loaned. So in theory, the Flyers are basically allowing him to play for another team this year. If that player's season overseas is done, he could come over because, hey, this year is getting burned off that ELC anyway.
One way or the
so
other.
whatever. Yeah. The reason why I don't think it's likely, number one, I have always operated under the assumption that Kolosov was not even likely to make the team out of camp next year. That they were going to want to give him some time in the AHL
you would think.
to become accustomed to the North America game and just kind of get his feet wet in North America, not just throw him to the Wolves as the backup. Like, assuming that Carter Hart is not a Philadelphia Flyer next season, my guess is the Flyers will go out and sign or trade for a legitimate backup that isn't Cal Peterson for next year because they won't want to just throw Ersson to the Wolves and give him 65 games while you're paying someone to just basically sit in there and get blown out every 5th night. That said, the difference in my mind between this and a college guy is that the reason why those college guys often play at the end of the year, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's not because like the team is desperate to see them. It's because that's how you get the contract done. Is that
they want to burn the
end
year.
up with a whiny ass William Gauthier.
The player wants to play. So as a carrot to convince him to sign, it's like, well, we'll give you 6 games. You can make your NHL debut, kid. And they're like, all right, I can't turn down a shot to be an NHLer right away. Let's do it. Like Mike Vecchione friggin' played a couple games at the end of the year. He never even sniffed the NHL afterwards. So to me, making the comparison to a college situation, it's different because in this situation, even if you bring Kolosov over, you no longer have to give him the carrot of you're getting NHL time because he's already under contract. That's no longer an incentive for you to give him. Now, hey, if everybody gets injured, if Ferguson gets injured, whatever, then hell, maybe. But I don't think that is a serious option, personally.
All right. Just, do you think it might be a possibility he plays in the AHL?
Yeah, maybe
this year.
If he wants to come over. Like, I think a lot of this too.
And like, he might be fucking tired.
Yeah,
like he just did play a whole season at a pretty high level.
Exactly. I don't think the Flyers are going to be on the phone being like, get over here. We want
They're
you to
not
play.
sending the Black Ops team.
No. But if he communicates to the Flyers that, hey, I would really love to get a jump on my North American career now. I'm feeling fresh. I'm feeling healthy. I don't think they would dislike that idea, but I don't think it's something where the Flyers are going to be pestering him to come over.
I'm just picturing Anne LaPerriere sitting there smoking a cigarette like, get me a fucking goalie. Like,
Fair.
Jesus.
Fair.
Just get me something. Next question from R. Thompson. Let's say the Flyers come away from the trade deadline with one more first-round pick. Would they take best player available, or given it's T-minus 2 years before the crazy Russian, and Thompson, listen, it's Mad Russian. By the way, Mad Russian hoodies are in the mail. Mine should be here tomorrow, if not today. I haven't checked the updated tracking, but I'm pretty sure I'll be wearing mine on the show tomorrow. T-minus 2 years before the Mad Russian. Do they draft 3 centers and hope they hit on a big one, or more likely, are they going to consolidate picks to move up? We'll start with that.
Yeah, well, I do want to talk about...
Say they have 3 first.
I want to talk about the second part of that question first. Because the second part of that question is actually kind of wrong.
I thought they would be targeting defense.
Well, not even that. Like, what he's more or less saying is that the only center that seems to be in the top 20 prospects is Celebrini. That's actually not true. So Celebrini is, he's going to go number 1. It's a no-brainer. But Berkeley Catton is another center who's likely to go in the top 20, and so is that Lidstrom, Caden Lidstrom. So there's 2 other guys who, I mean, obviously there's going to be some...
Caden Lidstrom sounds like such an NHL draft.
Yeah,
like,
right?
Such a fucking... let's just throw 2 names together.
Now, I'm not saying that... Number one, there's going to be some scouts that are obviously going to be like, well, he's not actually a center. Both those guys play center. Maybe they ultimately aren't centers at the NHL level, but there's at least that potential. My understanding is both of them have been viewed as centers. And then there's that... the Finnish guy, Helenas. He's also a center.
That's a good name.
Yes, Konsta Helenius, I believe is how you pronounce his name.
That's fun.
So there's a few centers. Now, that doesn't mean that the Flyers are going to necessarily trade up to get one of them. But what I am saying is that there are center possibilities in this draft beyond Celebrity.
We have talked about the first part of this a couple of times before. Like, say they have the 3 first-round picks. Like, maybe they target centers. They told us that they're, going to take a step back from defense, but obviously you never stop looking.
Yeah.
But center is now the main need.
Yeah.
What I'll say about this is you never draft for need. Now, maybe if you have 2 guys on your board and it's like, well, we're 50-50 on these 2 dudes, you use it as a tiebreaker. Okay. My prime example is Tampa Bay selecting Jonathan Drouin. You took the guy with the star potential, didn't work out. But because of that pedigree of that player, which lasted well into, this guy might not have it, like well into that part of his career, you traded him for Mikhail Sergachev, and then guess what happened? You won back-to-back Stanley Cups because you got what you needed later. Like, I'm always an advocate for taking best player available.
Agreed.
Like, it wouldn't be a goalie, but like, the Flyers have plenty of goalies, but if this dude on the board is going to be the next Marty Brodeur, you fucking take him, and someone will call you about him eventually, and then you get whatever you need because of it. That's my philosophy. How the Flyers look at this thing, I mean, especially if they have a bunch of picks, if there's a specific player at a specific position that they're going to trade up for, well, then that means you really trust your scouts. It's like, that guy's the guy we need. Yeah. Then you go get him.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, just take the best player available.
To me, it's like, if it's a tie, then maybe you go need.
Yeah.
Or, and this is probably the more applicable and more relevant point of discussion, is if one of the centers slips. That's where it's like, okay, well, hey, this is a positional need. We really like this guy. He was supposed to go in the top 8. Suddenly it's pick 13. He's still around. Then maybe you start thinking, like, to me, I don't think you necessarily have to now trade up for a defenseman. Now, there's a lot of real good defensemen in this draft. If you think you got a future number 1, he slips to your spot, run up there and grab him, because you can always use another future number 1.
Yes.
But to me, it's like, if you're going to trade up, I wouldn't necessarily be burning extra first-round picks to trade off for a defenseman. I would strongly consider burning extra first-round picks to trade off for a center.
If one of the center, that makes sense. Like, and that's like, you have these guys circled, but it's like, realistically, they ain't getting to us.
Yeah.
And then if all of a sudden they do, that changes your strategy.
Exactly.
Like, that makes sense.
Exactly.
All right. Next question from G. Faust. If the team continues to overachieve and say they win a playoff round / look competitive or not far away, is there a chance they look to sign a 1 or 2 seed this summer, or is that still a year or 2 away / is the draft where they will try to address this need? I'm sure they will attempt to address this need in the draft, which is before free agency.
Yeah.
I still don't see them signing a big name free agent this summer.
As much as I want the Elias Pettersson offer sheet.
I mean, that's the only one that could happen.
Highly unlikely in my mind.
Yeah, you can't.
Unless Danny really wants to do what Charlie was suggesting and just really like put it out there on the table to be measured and to be like, look, motherfuckers, I'm here to play. And I'm going to take Elias Pettersson from your team and you're going to like it. Like, maybe.
I just don't know if they're like, even if it was a focus of theirs in terms of like, man, we need to go. Let's get our first line center. I just don't think he's available right now in terms like, yeah, if you could somehow maneuver to get Elias Pettersson, I have to assume that Vancouver is not going to let him leave, especially after the season they've had. I don't know why he would want to leave. You know, he's watching this team win all these games. Why would he want to leave? But who knows?
It's fun
like,
here.
what's their next option? Like Elias Lindholm? They get Elias Lindholm, everybody's going to be screaming the second after they get Elias Lindholm that they still need a 1C.
And it's a bad contract.
Because he's just Kevin Hayes part 2.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the focus needs to be to find the guy through the draft, through the draft, or by trading for a Zegras type who hasn't quite reached his ceiling yet, but you think can.
Hockey trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I could see them maybe making a hockey trade, like Ristolainen, whatever leftover pieces that they have left after this deadline to try to get that. But outside of something miraculous like the Pettersson thing, it's going to be draft or kick the can down the road. We'll figure this out later.
Yeah.
Like that's what I see happening. Next question from Barry Schaefer. Sorry to be a pain in the ass. And Barry, you're never a pain in the ass.
Unbelievable,
He asked
Barry.
the question. Well, no, he asked the question about Bonk last week, and I have it saved on my desktop
guy.
still. I still have it, and I was just going to ask it later. But since it came up 2 weeks in a row, I'll ask the question now. What are we thinking about Bonk? He just keeps scoring goals, many of them net front on the power play. I didn't expect a lot of offense from him. And that's, I mean, I think the collective response to the Oliver Bonk pick when it was made was like, all right, they got a defenseman and he's got top 4 upside. But like, he doesn't seem to have that dynamic.
Yeah.
Like offensive, we called him a stay-at-home defenseman, and Charlie pushed back, was like, well, he's not like a stay-at-home.
No, he's not.
He's just not like, he's not going to be Eric fucking Carlson out there. It turns out maybe he is. No. What I'm seeing, like with all this bumper bonk stuff and the way they're using him on the power play, first of all, was it Gabe Perreault that everyone wanted?
Yes.
And he is teammates with William Gauthier. There is a chance that they were like, well, we know this asshole ain't coming, and now these two are hanging out for a year. Maybe we don't want to mess around with any of his teammates, so we're going to go with this Bonk character. But what I'm seeing, I mean, it's funny. His name's Bonk.
It's a great name.
It is.
Fantastic.
But what I'm seeing right now, like we know John Tortorella loves this idea of rovers. He's, given Travis Sanheim the green light. They get Jamie Drysdale. He's here for a minute. And he's like, oh, this dude. He's going to be down at the goal line sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe they foresaw a little bit of what this was going to be with Bonk and are like, we can deploy him in different interesting ways, or they're just maybe getting lucky in the London Knights. We're like, oh, look at this thing this guy can do. Like, what do you make of what we're seeing out of Bonk right now? I know you have some diehard piece coming out on Oliver Bonk pretty soon.
I do. I will have that later this week. Obviously, I did the piece last week on Denver Barkey, interviewed him over the phone. That came out, I think, on Thursday for diehards only, so check that out if you're a PHLY diehard. And if you're not, we'd love to have you. Love to have you join the membership family. But anyway, the Bonk piece should be coming later this week. To me, look, I think Bonk's point totals, while they're absolutely impressive, like he is benefiting from being on a really, really good London team. He's in that bumper spot on the power play down there. He's scoring a lot of points. He's really racking up the goals in particular. That said, he's not really driving the power play. And
he's playing a role on a good power play.
Yeah, exactly. And like, props to him. For you to be good in that role, you have to be a very smart player. And I do believe he is a very smart player. I don't see the dynamic ability, especially with the puck, for him yet. But if he can continue to develop as a very cerebral, anticipatory player who just sees the ice really well and sees what's going to happen next and takes full advantage, he could be a damn good defenseman. Now, I still don't see number one defenseman in him. I guess you never know. Like, nobody saw number one defenseman in Duncan Keith for like 4 years, and then he became a number one defenseman for a cup team. So like you never really know.
Duncan Keith is always my example. Dude spent 2 full seasons in the AHL. Yeah. Suddenly he's a Norris caliber guy winning 3 cups.
Yeah. So you never know, especially with defensemen. But I still don't see somebody who's that good. Now, I have probably raised my opinion of his potential upside from like, I think he's just going to be a solid second pair defenseman to like, yeah, maybe he could be like a 2-3. Maybe he could be in that like Sanheim type where, he could be your 1 if you're not that good. But if you're on a real good team, he could be your 2 or your 3, and that works. Like maybe that's a ceiling. And if you're getting that kind of guy in the 20s, it's pretty solid.
Question from John Berner. Has your opinions of Bonk and Barkey changed in light of their current seasons? How good can they be? We can just look at Denver Barkey because we just talked about Bonk. It looks like this kid might end up being one of those steals. I don't know, like first line caliber guy. I doubt it. But like you need depth. It's something we talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. I think once you get to an Eastern Conference final, a Stanley Cup final, your top line's like, okay, you're matching stars. Maybe one, just beats the shit out of the other, but they're probably going to mostly cancel each other out. You see that in the top 3, top 6. When you get to that third line, that HBK line for the Penguins, oh, well, we have Phil Kessel and you don't. So we win. Like, could Barkey be one of those X Factor type of guys, especially with all the extra stuff he does? Penalty killing, the speed, all that. The offense he's created for London.
Well, that's the thing. It seems like a lot of fans kind of are like, well, if they're not going to be a top liner, then obviously they're not that exciting of a prospect, or obviously they're not that valuable. But good hockey teams have 3 good lines, and the really great teams have 3 really good lines. And if you have a guy that you took super late and he ends up being a sick third liner, like that's good. Like that's a good thing. That's a success in my opinion.
I mean, I'm really excited about Denver Barkey.
He looks real fun.
But not because I think Denver Barkey is destined to be, the next Claude Giroux, the next Braden Point.
How dare you, Charles?
I mean, I'm not expecting that. Hey, if that happens, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's not a fair expectation. No. I watch him and I see a guy who looks like, to me, a surefire NHLer. Mm-hmm. He looks like a guy who's going to find a way. And look, it's not easy to overcome the size that he has. He's not a big guy. But I watch him and I see a guy who's going to find a way, and that's exciting to me.
And we have a general manager who knows what's up with being a little guy in the NHL. So.
Yeah, he does. I like Brian Knight, Denver Barkey, the next G. That was Kelly's comparison.
Are saying this.
That was Kelly's comparison prior to the show. And I actually liked your the way you put it, like where Giroux was drafted versus value. Like, all right, so you move that down.
Yeah.
Draft slot versus value. I could see something like that. Now, like, is he going to be 10-year captain, leader amongst all statistical categories in franchise history? Probably not, because the guy you get first overall probably isn't going to do those things. Like, it's a real reach, but like, I could see him maybe that working out. But anything from your Barkey piece that stuck out to you that maybe you're comfortable sharing without giving away the whole thing? Because pay for it, damn it.
Yeah.
Well, I like the fact that, number one, he has been watching a ton of Flyers games this year. He seems very excited about what they do on the penalty kill. He said he really pays close attention to Travis Konechny, and you can sort of see just like him watching him be like, I can do that. That looks like fun. And it was
so he definitely isn't going to opt out.
It sure seems like he wants to be here, just like Jamie Drysdale, try guy, the fly guy. It seems like he wants to be here. He said that they've had the Flyers have had a presence at London games pretty much from the start of the year, that it's pretty much every other weekend, at least a couple people in the organization are up there. He talks with Riley Armstrong very regularly.
And he actually has these conversations.
Actually does, yeah. He picks up the phone.
Yeah.
But like Nick Schultz, Brent Flair, Patrick Sharp.
I always forget Nick Schultz is a thing.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I would assume Schultz is going up there more to talk to Bonk than Barkey.
Yeah.
But like, he's still there. He probably says hi. He's a former NHLer. But it does seem like, and I'm not saying the Flyers didn't try to reach out to their prospects before. I think they are going to reach out to them so much moving forward. Like, they've hired so many people for this development thing, and then the Gauthier thing happens. It's like, no, just go. Like you literally, here's the credit card. Just go wherever the hell you want.
No, like,
and go there every weekend.
I see them setting up almost like a name, image, likeness super PAC for their college guys.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, whatever you need, we got you a Porsche.
Hire every single likable ex-flyer as professional best friend and just send them all on the road to make nice with the kids.
Yeah, I just get the
Works
sense
for
that,
me.
and obviously they have the connection with London where, number one, they have 2 players on the team. There's obviously quite a few guys, I believe. Sam Dickens is the big one. Like, they have guys that are draft eligible, which I'm assuming is one of the big reasons why Brent Flair's been up there to watch him, because he's a potential top 10, if not top 5 pick on defense. But not only that, they have the assets. They have the resources to be able to send guys up to London.
It's why
every
having
weekend.
Comcast as the owner is actually good.
I mean, having an owner that's willing to
unlimited
spend a lot of
funds
money
is good.
It's actually good.
These are the ways where you can. I'm not going to say it's cap circumvention because it's legal, but this is how you can get around a salary cap, because they only cap how much you can spend on NHL players. They don't cap how much you can spend on every other part of your organization.
And that's the advantage being a quote unquote premier organization creates. And that's why I have to get to this. It starts out with Dr. Evil Gritty just doing his thing. Maybe Charlie, maybe Kelly. I don't know which one yet.
Oh my God.
But it starts out with Dr. Evil Gritty just doing his thing and asks if a premier NHL franchise might poach Danny B. But our friend who is in the chat right now, K-Red, follows up with an actual question. Or like comment, basically. If anyone, they should be worried about Bradshaw getting a head coaching
I worry
gig.
about that.
And that is something, because we talked last week. I don't think Charlie was here for this one, but like, we look at Torts and Shaw. Like, if they're this good at turning Risto, Sealer, Zamula, Walker into more than we expected, and have hopefully found a new level with Sanheim. I just named all the defensemen, basically. You know? Like, shouldn't we kind of be treating depth defensemen almost like NFL running backs? Like, not to say they're interchangeable, but like, hey, if we can do this with Zamula and Sealer, we can probably just find guys and turn them into somewhat serviceable dudes.
I mean, that's pretty much what the Rangers did for years with their backup goalie situation behind Lundqvist. It was like, well, we have Benoit Allaire, who's like the best goalie coach ever. We're never going to have anybody supplant Lundqvist, so let's get a backup goalie in, have him work under him for a year and a half, and then trade him for a second-round pick. Yeah. And they did it like 3 times.
No, I remember there was a time where like the Richards team had Lundqvist's number, and so Halicat started like 2 or 3 in a row and shut them out twice. Like, they were just like, well, fuck it. Why put Lundqvist through this? And then they'd beat us anyway. So, but like, if they were to lose Bradshaw, would that be a concern? Because right now I look at this as a definite, like, this is like a one-up they have on other organizations. We can find a Nick Sealer who was not an NHL player, not an NHL regular until he came here, and now Nick Sealer might get us something pretty good.
It's very clear that both that and the penalty kill are a huge reason why this team has been any good this season. And I would very much not like to lose the wizard behind all of this improvement. So, like, maybe nobody say anything about Bradshaw anymore. Like, let's just keep it to ourselves. But I do think that, I mean, if I was a team that needed a head coach, I would look at what he's done here and be like, I would like to interview that man.
So here is what I guess to kick it off, what I'll say is that I would very much advocate for the Flyers to pay Bradshaw more money. Number one, he deserves it. Number two, like, sure, he's done a great job. He makes sure he doesn't leave. However, I don't think it's something that Flyers fans have to be super worried about. Maybe a little, but here's what you have to remember about this situation. Number one, Bradshaw's 59 years old. He hasn't gotten a head coaching job yet. I'm not saying that that's super old, but it's not super young.
Fair.
And for a guy that's that age to not yet have a head coaching gig at the NHL level, it takes a lot for teams to want it. Like, teams want the shiny new toy. Bradshaw is no longer the shiny new toy. You hire, like, teams take risks on guys, you know, in their early 40s or whatever. Even if Bradshaw were to work out for them, he's probably not going to be coaching the team for super long.
Yeah.
it probably shouldn't be as big of a deal as I think it is to teams, because teams fire their coaches in 5 years anyways. Who gives a shit? But
You're lucky.
I think teams do. I think teams would account for that. That said, I did hear that Shaw interviewed somewhere last offseason. So like he is at least a guy who gets some looks. And given how strong the penalty kill has been this year, maybe. I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical that he is going to be viewed by the league at large as one of the top candidates. Doesn't mean that a team won't be super impressed and be like, let's interview him and see how he does. But I just don't get the sense that he is someone who's going to be like the hot candidate of the summer, despite how good the penalty kill and the defense has done for the Flyers.
And when you think about it, there's really not a lot of assistant coach to head coach that happens in the league. Like, obviously it happens, but it's not like a frequent
A lot
thing.
of times it happens because the coach gets fired.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's like,
Yes.
I listened, I wanted to bring this up when we asked this question because I'm listening to 32 Thoughts today. And Jeff Marek is talking about the situation in LA with Todd McClellan. And we see this, it's kind of the same dynamic as Torts. And we've seen it in the past. Like, we've called different coaches professional best friends and shit. But like, you go from being the assistant coach who's good cop to now all of a sudden you have to be the hard ass.
Yeah.
And the players are like, well, this is phony. You know?
Right.
So it doesn't always take like that, especially maybe if it's in one organization like that. If you go to a totally new organization where the guys don't know you, it's a little different. But it can be a different dynamic. One of the reason I'm most concerned about losing Brad Shaw, honestly, his replacement might be in LaPerriere.
Oh my God.
Oh, we're bringing Ian back.
And I'm just like,
no.
They might just hire someone totally different. Maybe Tortorella has his eye on another guy. Maybe there's someone deeper down in the organization.
How long are we going to pretend that Ian LaPerriere is good at coaching?
This came up.
How long can it last?
I hope that. Look, I don't know for sure one way or the other if Ian LaPerriere is a good AHL coach. I would hope that we know fairly confidently that he's not a good NHL assistant coach, at least someone who would run a penalty kill, because we have an extended track record of him being bad at it.
I'm just looking at what Brad Shaw does and what Ian LaPerriere did when he was here and thinking, oh no. Here we go
that'd be
again.
terrifying.
Here we go again.
Let's not do that again.
Let's just do the last question.
Okay.
Yeah.
From Kyle of the Dead, when we passed, when we passed on Cole Caulfield twice in the draft, the previous regime had tried to sell us on the idea that Brink was just as good of a goal scorer. However, you guys seem to think he's more of a playmaker than shooter. What do you think his NHL ceiling is, goals/points wise? I know we made the idea like, oh well, he's just as good of a goal. Maybe we got both with York and Jesus.
I honestly, I was going to try to help you, but I have no idea what direction you're taking this.
Maybe we got like best of both worlds with York and Brink over Caulfield, but just like maybe the overall offensive production is the same than the goal scoring. I think his ceiling is decent second liner.
I just hope that we get a chance to see more of Bobby Brink. Like, I really need him back on the team because, first of all, I think we talked about this last week. He's been doing exactly what you want someone who gets sent down to the AHL to do.
4 points in 5 games.
Which is just tear it the F up and prove that, like, no, I'm actually too good to be here. So bring me back up. And also, I do think he has potential to be an impactful player in the NHL, but I do think he needs to be given the same kind of leash that Forrester was given. Like, I think he needs the time to just get it going at the NHL level. And he wasn't given the same leash that some of the other kids were given. And I get it. But I really do hope that we get another chance this season to see Brink up with the big team.
I gotta believe
fairly
we
confident.
see him.
I'm
It
fairly
seems
confident
like we will,
I
right?
really
I think we
hope
will.
they don't just like, because he was too good when he was playing well to just be like, well, that was luck. Like, I don't think it was.
No.
He was really good.
No, there's something there. I think he needs to improve. I think he needs to improve in areas where the areas he needs to improve in are the areas where Tyson Forrester doesn't need to improve, which is why Tyson Forrester is still here and Brink isn't. That said, like, Brink was up for 3.5 months.
Yeah.
Like, it's not as
This wasn't a tryout.
Yeah, it's not as if they just gave him a brief audition and then gave up on him. Like, he got a long look.
His minutes got cut real.
Yeah, but not until like January.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was like into 2024 when it started to be like, oh, he's playing 10 minutes. Like, he played 18 minutes the game before he played 950 or whatever it was.
I also, one point I want to make about this, because obviously Cole Caulfield continues to get brought up. I really like Cole Caulfield. I do, however, think that Flyers fans make him out to be better than he is because he's like the girl who got away.
Yeah.
Because like I had someone, and this wasn't even sarcasm, this was dead serious. Someone was asked me on Twitter, like, is Cole Caulfield, is Travis Konechny better than Cole Caulfield?
Yes.
And I was like, of course he fucking is. Like, that's not even close. But the thing is that this person was being like apologetic. Like, I watched it. Basically what this person said was, I watched a Montreal game, expecting Cole Caulfield to be amazing, and he was just fine. And now I'm starting to think that Travis Konechny might be better than him. And I was like, of course Travis Konechny is better than Cole Caulfield. Maybe at some point down the road, Cole Caulfield could be better than Travis Konechny, but he's not there yet. But I do think that some Flyers fans think he is because they still look at him as the guy the Flyers should have taken. And then he had that real big year a couple years ago where it was like, oh, he's going to be a 60-goal scorer. And he really hasn't gotten to that point yet.
He dropped off big time.
I think he's still a real good player, but I don't think he is this like definitely going to be a star guy that we were certain he was going to be 2 years ago.
He scores a decent number of goals. Like, he hasn't played a full season yet. He had 23 in 67 games. I guess that's a full season. No, that's a regular length season.
Yeah.
23 in 67 games, and then 26 in 46 games. This year he is 17 in 49. He scores in bunches, but it's not as if he's breaking 40 yet. That said, he turned 23 January 2nd.
No, I mean, I'm still very high on Cole Caulfield.
There's a huge ceiling, but like at this point, he's just a nice offensive player on a bad team.
Exactly.
Like, that's it.
Exactly.
A really fucking bad team.
Yeah.
Like, one of the worst teams.
Yeah. So it just like, would I rather at this point, have Cole Caulfield than Cam York and Bobby Brink? Yeah, probably. But I don't think it is like this travesty that they didn't take Caulfield. Like, Caulfield has not done enough yet to make me be like, oh man, this is like Earl Thomas over Brandon Graham. And then Brandon Graham ultimately ended up being a big part of the Super Bowl.
It was the right pick.
So who gives a crap? But seriously, like, that's the way it was positioned for a long time, is like, it was the worst decision in team history. And Caulfield looks like he's a darn good NHLer. He doesn't look like, so far, he is a game-changing superstar.
But in terms of Brink's upside, like, what Caulfield is doing now, 20-ish goals, mid-20s maybe.
He's like a 30-goal scorer.
40-some points.
Yeah, that's where he is now, 17, 39, and 49 games.
I could see that being Brink's, like, ceiling.
Yeah.
But for a second-round pick, that's pretty good. You need those guys, too. Yeah. All right, that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLSID number 1464766. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Of course, you got to follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. Check out PHLYlocker.com. All sorts of good merch up there. New stuff, the Mad Russian stuff. We still have some of that left. It's being shipped now, so if you already ordered the Mad Russian stuff, you're like, where is it? I bet you it gets to you this week. But the Dry Guy, the Fly Guy shirts, the cool little bully dude that's actually just Charlie wearing a hockey helmet, PHLY Hockey, that's up as well. Check that out at PHLYlocker.com. And make sure your reminders are set right here on YouTube so you never miss a live show. That'll do it for us. My name is Bill Matz. For Charlie, for Kelly, have a great Monday, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.